Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. Women are more than 3 times as likely as men to experience migraines. This is the result of hormonal differences that begin with the onset of puberty. Before these differences emerge, girls and boys experience migraines at the same rate during childhood. Shoes discovered among the remains of the Titanic are typically found in pairs because the victims were wearing them when they died. The bodies decomposed, but the shoes were preserved because of the tannic acid present in the leather. Squidward is canonically an octopus, not a squid. Although his name might suggest otherwise, the SpongeBob SquarePants character was conceived as an octopus, something his creator, marine biologist and animator Steven Hillenburg, confirmed on several occasions. His design has 6 visible limbs instead of 8 because drawing all of the legs made the character look too cluttered. Hillenburg felt that his large, rounded head fit the appearance of an octopus especially well. Dominant female cotton-top tamarins use pheromones to prevent subordinate females from reproducing. The pheromones suppress behavior and delay puberty. If more than one female in a group becomes pregnant, only one of the pregnancies will survive. Almost all vertebrates yawn. Mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and even fish share the same trait. Yawn-like behaviors have been observed in animals as different as dogs, penguins, snakes, turtles, and numerous fish. Its exact function is still being studied and is probably not identical across all species. In some animals, it appears during transitions between sleep and wakefulness, while in others, it may be related to changes in activity, communication, or stressful situations. Yawning is a surprisingly ancient behavior from an evolutionary perspective, and is present in groups of vertebrates separated by hundreds of millions of years of evolution. The pratfall effect occurs when highly competent people tend to become more likable after making mistakes, while people who seem average tend to become less likable, even when they make the same mistakes. Dogs have unique nose prints, just like human fingerprints. Each one is unique to the individual dog and does not even depend on breed. The pattern formed by tiny ridges, lines, and grooves on the surface of the nose remains relatively stable throughout the animal's life. For this reason, nose prints have been used in some canine identification systems. There are even registries that can associate a nose print with a specific dog, similar to how a microchip or identification tag can help identify it. The general shape of the nose may look similar among dogs of the same breed, but their tiny surface patterns show individual differences. It would take approximately 18 months to walk the Great Wall of China. The estimate depends on the route chosen, since the wall is not a single continuous structure, but an enormous network of fortifications built during different dynasties. Altogether, its known sections extend for more than 12,000 miles and include walls, trenches, and natural barriers. Many parts cross mountains, deserts, and extremely rugged terrain, while others are deteriorated or have almost completely disappeared. Because of this, literally walking its entire length would be much more complicated than simply following one continuous route from beginning to end. A honeymoon used to be a bridal tour in which the couple could visit relatives who had been unable to attend the wedding. In some parts of Europe, newly married couples made social visits after the ceremony to present themselves as a married couple to relatives and acquaintances. Over time, especially during the 19th century, couples from wealthier classes began turning these tours into longer and more private trips. European destinations such as France and Italy became popular among British newlyweds, and the honeymoon gradually evolved into the romantic trip we know today. Glass sponges can live for up to 15,000 years. This means that the oldest living glass sponges already existed before any human built a permanent structure on Earth. These marine animals live mainly in deep, cold waters, where their extremely slow metabolism contributes to their extraordinary longevity. Their skeletons are made of tiny structures of silica, a material similar to glass, which is where their name comes from. Some form enormous underwater reefs that provide shelter for fish, crustaceans, and other organisms. The longest time between the births of 2 twins is 90 days. The extraordinary case occurred in Ireland when Amy Elliott was born prematurely in June 2012, and her twin sister, Katie, remained in the womb for nearly 3 more months. Doctors managed to prolong the pregnancy after the first birth, allowing Katie to continue developing until September. The 90-day difference between them was recognized as a world record and made their birth one of the most remarkable documented cases of delayed twin delivery. The only difference between a hurricane and a typhoon is the location where the storm occurs. Hurricanes occur in the Atlantic, and typhoons occur in the Pacific. Both are the same type of weather phenomenon, tropical cyclones that form over warm ocean waters and can develop extremely powerful winds. The term hurricane is also used in the northeastern and central Pacific, while typhoon is used mainly in the northwestern Pacific. In other regions, such as the Indian Ocean and the South Pacific, they are usually simply called tropical cyclones. Honeybees that consume nectar containing granotoxins can produce a special honey called mad honey. Consuming this honey causes severe intoxication and disorientation. Granotoxins occur naturally in some species of rhododendrons, and honey made from their flowers can retain these substances. It is especially well known in regions near the Black Sea, where it has been produced for centuries. It usually has a distinctive, slightly bitter taste, and its effects depend on the amount consumed. Historically, this unusual honey even appears in ancient accounts involving troops that became ill after consuming it. Wearing a necktie can reduce blood flow to the brain by an average of 7.5%. Researchers observed this effect using magnetic resonance imaging while participants wore their ties progressively tighter. Pressure around the neck can slightly restrict circulation through the blood vessels in the area. The study was conducted with young, healthy men, so its results do not necessarily apply in the same way to everyone. Portobello mushrooms and white button mushrooms are the same fungus, just at different stages of growth. The same is true of cremini mushrooms. They all belong to the species Agaricus bisporus. White mushrooms are usually harvested when they are young, while cremini mushrooms are a brown variety that is also harvested before reaching maturity. Portobello mushrooms are allowed to grow longer, so they develop a much larger cap, a firmer texture, and a stronger flavor. Their differences in appearance have led them to often be sold as if they were completely different mushrooms. Chinstrap penguins take more than 10,000 microsleeps a day, averaging 4 seconds each, for a total of more than 11 hours of sleep per day. During the breeding season, these brief naps allow them to rest while constantly keeping watch over their nests, eggs, and chicks. Some microsleeps last only a few seconds, but as they accumulate throughout the day, they provide a surprisingly large amount of rest. Researchers observed this behavior both while the birds were on land and while they were in the water. In breeding colonies, where thousands of penguins live amid noise, movement, and potential threats, sleeping for long, uninterrupted periods can be impractical. More than 30% of Vietnamese people have the last name Nguyen, and nearly 85% of the country's population has one of 15 last names. Of the 10 most viewed YouTube videos, 5 are children's videos and 5 are pop music videos. Among them are global phenomena that have accumulated billions of views and have been watched for years in numerous countries. Baby Shark Dance reached the #1 spot and became the first video on the platform to surpass 10 billion views. Songs such as Despacito, Shape of You, and See You Again have also ranked near the top, alongside children's content such as Wheels on the Bus and Johnny Johnny, Yes Papa. During World War II, a German interrogator named Hans Scharf discovered that the best way to obtain information from prisoners was through kindness. Instead of resorting to threats or violence, he talked with Allied airmen, took them on walks, and tried to earn their trust. He also avoided asking overly direct questions and used information he already knew to get prisoners to reveal details without realizing their importance. His methods became so well known that, after the war, they were studied by American specialists in interrogation and psychology. While stationed in Haiti in 1925, Marine Corps Gunnery Sergeant Faustin Workus was crowned king by a local tribal queen because he appeared to fit a local prophecy. The dead internet theory is an online conspiracy theory that claims the internet now consists mainly of bot activity and automatically generated content, manipulated through algorithmic curation to intentionally influence the population and minimize organic human activity. Bird migration was not proven until 1822. Before that, theories explaining their seasonal disappearance included hibernation and other surprising transformations. That year, a white stork appeared in Germany with a long African arrow lodged through its neck, evidence that it had traveled from Africa and survived the journey. The specimen became known as the Field stork, or arrow stork, and was one of the first convincing pieces of physical evidence of long-distance bird migration. Since then, more similar cases have been documented, while techniques such as bird banding and satellite tracking have made it possible to discover migration routes spanning entire continents. The USS Samuel B. Roberts is the deepest shipwreck in the world. It lies at a depth of 22,621 feet. Due to their long association with humans, dogs have developed the ability to thrive on a starch-rich diet that would be unsuitable for any other canid species. During their domestication, many dog populations acquired genetic adaptations that improved their ability to make use of carbohydrate-rich foods. One of the best known is an increase in copies of the AMY2B gene, which is associated with an enzyme that helps digest starch. This adaptation probably became especially important when human societies developed agriculture, and grains became a regular part of their diet. The 57-mile border between Afghanistan and China has the largest time zone difference of any border, with a difference of 3.5 hours. During the Apollo 13 mission, Jack Swigert realized that he had forgotten to file his tax return. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration contacted the Internal Revenue Service, which agreed that he was considered to be out of the country and was therefore entitled to an extension of the deadline. John R. Brinkley was a radio pioneer and fake doctor. He made part of his fortune by implanting goat testicles into humans to increase their virility. The Battle of Palmdale in 1956 was an effort by the United States Air Force to destroy an out-of-control practice drone. 2 fighter jets fired 208 rockets at the propeller-driven drone, but all of them missed the target and caused fires that burned 1,000 acres, damaged homes, and destroyed a pickup truck. The reason The Simpsons are drawn so roughly in their early appearances on The Tracy Ullman Show is that Matt Groening had submitted basic sketches, assuming the animators would clean them up, but the animators actually just traced his drawings. Charles de Gaulle was not informed about the D-Day landings until 2 days beforehand, because British and American leaders did not fully trust that the information could be kept secret within French circles. De Gaulle, who led Free France, was informed of the essential details shortly before the invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944. The operation had been protected by one of the largest military secrecy and deception efforts of the war. Fictitious armies, fake equipment, and radio transmissions were even created to convince Germany that the main attack would take place somewhere else. Economist Michael Hausman used data from 30,000 employees to find correlations between their preferred web browser and job performance. Employees who used Firefox and Chrome stayed in their jobs 15% longer, were 19% less likely to miss work, and had happier customers than employees who used Internet Explorer or Safari. The Dragon Ball Z character, Frieza, known for his ruthless destruction of planets in order to profit from reselling them, was inspired by the behavior of real estate speculators during Japan's economic bubble in the 1980s. After the American Civil War, it is estimated that between 1/3 and 1/2 of the currency in circulation was counterfeit. The problem had become enormous because numerous banks issued their own banknotes, creating a wide variety of designs that made the work of counterfeiters easier and made genuine money harder to recognize. To combat counterfeiting, the federal government created the Secret Service in 1865. Interestingly, the agency was created specifically to protect American currency, not the president, a responsibility it would formally assume several decades later. Newborn babies can temporarily produce a small amount of milk due to the influence of maternal hormones. This phenomenon is known as neonatal milk and has traditionally also been called witch's milk. It can occur during the first days or weeks of life and usually disappears on its own as the hormonal influence received during pregnancy decreases. The unusual traditional name is centuries old and arose from old European folk beliefs. Although it may seem surprising, it is a phenomenon that has been known for a long time and can occur in both newborn boys and girls. Prince Charles was first in line to the British throne from the age of 3. He held that position for 70 years, becoming the longest-serving heir to the British throne after surpassing Edward VII's record of 59 years on April 20, 2011. Metabolism in adulthood does not slow down until age 60. A large study that analyzed thousands of people found that, after adjusting for body size and composition, energy expenditure remains surprisingly stable from about age 20 to age 60. From that point on, it begins to decline gradually by around 1% each year. During childhood, the opposite occurs. Metabolism reaches especially high levels during the first year of life. These findings challenged the popular idea that metabolism begins to slow noticeably when people reach their 30s or 40s. Babe Ruth became a shirt maker as a teenager while attending a reform school or orphanage. Even during his baseball career, he adjusted his own shirt collars instead of going to a tailor. Deep-sea mining for valuable minerals such as nickel, cobalt, and rare earth elements is being explored on the ocean floor, but the industry is controversial because of concerns that it could disrupt ecosystems. The Lockheed CL-1201 was a 1960s design for a nuclear-powered supersonic flying aircraft carrier. If it had reached the prototype stage, its wingspan would have been twice as long as that of any aircraft in existence today. Snoopy was originally going to be called Sniffy, but Charles Schulz changed the name at the last moment after seeing a comic strip with the same name. He chose Snoopy, a name his mother had suggested for the family's next dog. After Michael Jackson's death, his sister discovered 2 hard drives in his home containing more than 100 unreleased songs. Many of them were not registered. In 2010, Sony signed an agreement with Jackson's estate to release 10 posthumous albums, but only 3 were released. The Hong Kong Jockey Club, which operates horse racing in Hong Kong, is the city's largest single taxpayer, having paid $28.6 billion in 2022, equivalent to $3,800 for every man, woman, and child in the region. Poitou was a famous 18th century thoroughbred racehorse that, according to the story, got his unusual name when a stable boy was told to write potatoes and instead wrote pot, followed by 8 O's. The owner found it so funny that he kept the name. The steam engine, wind turbine, and vending machine were invented 2,000 years ago by a Greek engineer named Hero. This brilliant inventor from Alexandria described numerous mechanisms that used air, water, steam, pulleys, and counterweights. His aeolipile used steam to spin a sphere and is often considered an ancient precursor to the steam engine. He also designed a wind-powered device to produce sounds, and a machine that dispensed holy water when someone inserted a coin. Among his other creations were temple doors that opened automatically, and complex mechanisms used in theatrical performances. There are currently around 25 blimps in the world. Only about half are in active service, and many are used for advertising and to provide aerial coverage of major sporting events. Goodyear's modern airships, for example, are technically semi-rigid zeppelins rather than traditional blimps. Birds control the shape of their wings during flight by using hook-shaped microstructures in their feathers to prevent them from separating too much. The hooks make noise when they detach, so they are actually absent in silent flyers such as barn owls. In 1885, the United States Army Corps of Engineers used approximately 300,000 pounds of explosives to obliterate Flood Rock Island in New York City's East River as part of the clearing of Hell Gate for safer navigation. It has been described as the largest planned explosion before testing of the atomic bomb began. There is a mummified redwood forest on a Canadian island in the high Arctic, near the North Pole. Some of the trees reached up to 138 feet tall and grew during a warm period in Earth's history, despite experiencing 3 full months of darkness every year. For the video game Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, between $40 and $50 million was spent on developing the game, while between $150 and $160 million was spent on advertising. In 2021, an Italian artist sold an invisible sculpture for 13,000 British pounds and gave the buyer a certificate of authenticity to prove that it was real. The work, created by Salvatore Garau, was titled Io Sono, meaning I am, and was not made of any visible physical material. According to the artist's instructions, it was to be displayed in an empty space measuring approximately 5 feet by 5 feet. Garau also created other invisible works and even installed one in front of the Milan Stock Exchange, marking only the space it supposedly occupied. Ocean Conservation Namibia is a group of men who search every day for seals that have become entangled in fishing nets and other harmful objects, so they can rescue them. They would do the same for other animals, but seals are the only ones they can get close enough to. In 1973, the rugby teams of Scotland and Wales refused to play in Ireland because of the risk of violence. England, however, traveled to Dublin and lost. England's captain later said that they might not have been good, but at least they showed up. The Limousin got its name from the Limousin horse of the Limousin region in France. It is a now extinct breed that was merged into the modern Selle Francais breed in 1958. The limousine horse was bred as a luxury riding and carriage horse and was a favorite mount of the French aristocracy and royalty. Curtis Flowers was a man who was tried 6 times for the same crime by the same prosecutor and sentenced to death 4 times. But all of the convictions were overturned following a Supreme Court ruling in his favor, and he was released after spending more than 20 years on death row. Vitamin D is a hormone. Hormones help control how cells and organs function. However, it was historically called a vitamin because it was identified as an essential nutrient before its hormonal function was fully understood. The body can produce it when the skin receives enough ultraviolet B radiation from the sun. The liver and kidneys then transform it into its active hormonal form, which helps regulate calcium and phosphorus. In addition to being essential for maintaining bones and teeth, its receptors are present in numerous tissues throughout the body. The song Chocolate Salty Balls from the show South Park reached #1 on the United Kingdom singles chart in 1998 and even surpassed the Spice Girls song Goodbye. Brian Helgeland, the director and screenwriter of the movie A Knight's Tale, said that he intended to show what Geoffrey Chaucer, played by Paul Bettany, might have been doing and what could have inspired him to write the Canterbury Tales during the 6 months in which he appears to have been missing in 1372. Japan's monarchy is the world's oldest continuous hereditary monarchy, recognizing 126 monarchs and tracing its origins back to February 11th, 600 before Christ, with a mythical origin. However, the current dynasty has no name, and its members have no last name, being referred to simply as the Imperial House. In 1937, 7 North American beavers were released in Finland in an effort to increase the population of Eurasian beavers, which had nearly been hunted to extinction. This was before it was known that they were actually 2 different species. Today, approximately 12,000 North American beavers live in Finland. An American supercomputer labeled Needs Repair with 8,000 Intel Xeon processors and 300 terabytes of random access memory was won at auction with a bid of $480,000 in April 2024. According to a 2016 study, having a first-class section on an airplane quadruples the chances of an air rage incident occurring among passengers. In addition, making economy-class passengers walk through first class while boarding doubles the chances again. When Eleanor Roosevelt was asked to sit in the section reserved for white people during a segregated conference in the southern United States, she refused and placed her chair in the aisle separating the 2 sections, where she remained for the rest of the event. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock Holmes, exonerated 2 innocent men by investigating their cases in his spare time. This contributed in part to the establishment of England's criminal appeals system. Major orange juice producers add chemical fragrances called flavor packs to their juice to provide their brand's distinctive flavor. This is because the juice loses its flavor during pasteurization and deoxygenation. Attorney Andrew G. Haley was the world's first specialist in space law. He was instrumental in founding the International Institute of Space Law, which provides guidelines on how law should apply to space and extraterrestrial beings. He died in 1966, 3 years before the moon landing. The Acadia AD-42 was a Yellowstone-class destroyer tender in the United States Navy. It was the first ship to have a mixed-gender crew during wartime and was nicknamed the Love Boat during the Persian Gulf War after 10% of the crew became pregnant during the deployment. Coolio was actually in his early 30s when he recorded Gangsta's Paradise, and its iconic line, "I'm 23 now, but will I live to see 24? The way things are going, I don't know." Your fingernails grow at around 1 nanometer per second. So in just a few seconds, they grow approximately the length of the smallest features in a modern 3 nanometer processor. Although this growth is impossible to see with the naked eye, it continues throughout the day and eventually adds up to about 1/8 of an inch per month for fingernails. Toenails usually grow considerably more slowly. The rate can also vary depending on age, finger, time of year, and other factors. Generally, the nails on the dominant hand grow slightly faster. The first known recipe for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich dates back to 1901. It was published by Julia Davis Chandler in the Boston Cooking School magazine of Culinary Science and Domestic Economics, where she recommended combining layers of bread with peanut butter and currant or crabapple jelly. At the time, peanut butter was still a relatively novel product and was not primarily associated with children's food. Decades later, the combination became enormously popular in the United States, thanks to the industrial production of peanut butter, sliced bread, and fruit preserves. Howard Hughes was a chronic insomniac who wanted to watch movies on television when most people were asleep. When he first arrived in Las Vegas, he discovered that there were no television stations broadcasting all night. So he bought a local station in 1967 and turned it into a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week channel. Byron Low-Tax Looper, the nominee for a seat in the Tennessee House of Representatives, once decided that the only way to win was to murder his opponent. Despite being the only person left on the ballot, he lost the election and was sentenced to life in prison. The youngest person to reach the summit of Mount Everest was only 13 years old, while the oldest person to climb it was 80 years old. American Jordan Romero reached the summit in 2010 when he was 13 years and 10 months old. At the other extreme, Japan's Yuichiro Miura reached the summit in 2013 at the age of 80. Miura had already climbed Everest at advanced ages and reclaimed the record for oldest climber more than once. When Texas joined the Union as a slave state in 1845, a legal technicality created a strip of land with no government or law, which later became the Oklahoma Panhandle. People from Kansas moved there to evade strict alcohol laws, and the unofficial capital was called Beer City. 4 Catholic priests survived less than a mile from the explosion of an atomic bomb in Hiroshima. The priests were in a Jesuit residence relatively close to the hypocenter when the bomb exploded on August 6, 1945. Among them was German priest Hubert Schiffer, who later recounted his experience on numerous occasions. The building where they were staying was severely damaged but remained partially standing. The story of these Jesuits became well known because of how extraordinary it was that they survived an explosion that devastated much of Hiroshima and affected countless buildings located at similar distances. Philip II, father of Alexander the Great, is credited with creating one of the world's first professional armies. Ruling from 359 to 336 before Christ, Philip's reforms turned Macedonia into the dominant power on the Greek peninsula, paving the way for Alexander's conquest of Persia in 326 before Christ. Medieval European cuisine used to be more complex and flavorful. However, once spices became cheap and readily available to the poor, elites began removing spices from European cuisine because they did not want to be associated with people of limited means. This trend had lasting effects on European cuisine. The first 6 movies in the Saw franchise included blood donation campaigns as part of their promotions. More than 120,000 pints of blood were collected through these campaigns, which is estimated to have helped save around 360,000 lives. English as She Is Spoke is a Portuguese to English translation guide written by an author who had no knowledge of English. Instead, he used a Portuguese to French guide and then a French to English guide. The resulting book was read by both Mark Twain and Abraham Lincoln for a good laugh. When Rocky won the Academy Awards for Best Picture and Best Director, Sylvester Stallone did not win any Academy Award for it, despite having written and starred in the movie. A 5-year-old girl from Oklahoma named Edith Fuller defeated 52 other children to win a regional spelling bee and qualified for the national event in 2017. She is the youngest participant ever to secure a spot in the Scripps National Spelling Bee. Hoover Dam contains enough concrete to build a 2-lane highway from San Francisco to New York. Several million cubic yards of concrete were used to build the dam and its associated structures, an extraordinary amount for a project begun during the 1930s. The main structure stands more than 700 feet tall, and its base is about as thick as the length of 2 football fields. Because of the enormous volume of concrete, engineers had to pour it in large blocks and use pipes carrying chilled water to speed up the cooling process. The Arlington Ladies are a volunteer organization generally made up of the wives of general officers. Their mission is to attend the funeral service of any member of the United States military who is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. The Tomb of Jesus Christ is a site in Japan where people claim that Jesus was actually buried. It includes a burial site, a plaque in Hebrew, and an origin story involving the use of a body double, explaining his journey before eventually dying in Japan. The Swiss cheese model is a form of risk analysis that proposes that some errors are caused by failures in multiple systems that line up, like the holes in different slices of Swiss cheese. It was developed by British psychologist James Reason, and is used especially in fields such as aviation, medicine, and industrial safety. Each slice represents a protective barrier, and each hole represents a weakness. Normally, a failure is stopped by another barrier. But when several holes line up, the danger can pass through all the defenses and ultimately cause an accident. Leonardo da Vinci conducted detailed experiments to understand the nature of gravity long before Galileo Galilei and Isaac Newton. In his notebooks, he left drawings and notes showing attempts to mathematically study falling objects and their acceleration. In one of his experiments, he imagined a moving container dropping particles, creating patterns whose trajectories could be analyzed geometrically. Modern studies of his manuscripts indicate that Leonardo understood that objects accelerated as they fell. Although he lacked the mathematical tools needed to formulate a law of gravity, his observations came more than a century before Galileo's work on free fall. Alcohol is not allowed on the International Space Station. It is not prohibited only because of intoxication or health risks, but because alcohol is a volatile compound that can damage the station's water filtration system. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration also prohibits mouthwash, aftershave, and perfume for the same reason. Petra is a female black swan who made headlines between 2006 and 2008 after falling in love with a swan-shaped pedal boat on a lake in Münster, Germany. Reported missing in January 2009, she was eventually found on another lake, this time with a mate of her own species. There are three main types of circus clowns in a traditional trio: the white-faced clown, who acts as the leader and authority figure; the Contra Auguste, who usually serves as an intermediary and imitator of the white-faced clown; and the Auguste, who plays the clumsiest and most comedic role in the group. Commotio cordis is a cardiac arrest that can occur if you are struck in the chest at exactly the wrong moment, causing a disruption in the heart's electrical impulses. It directly affects the heart rhythm and, in most cases, causes death within 3 minutes. Vacuum cleaners existed before electricity was common. They were manually pumped while cleaning. Some of these early devices used levers, cranks, or bellows operated by a person to create the suction needed to collect dust. By the late 19th century, several patented mechanical designs had appeared, although many were bulky and required considerable effort to use. There were even enormous engine-powered cleaning machines that remained outside buildings and sucked up dust through long hoses inserted through doors and windows. In the game Tiger Woods 99 for PlayStation 1, the first 100,000 copies of the game contained a hidden trick that a developer secretly inserted. When placed in a computer, the disc contained a data file that played the first South Park short ever made. These copies were later recalled by Electronic Arts. The most expensive movie poster ever sold at auction was for the lost 1927 film London After Midnight. The winning bid was $478,000, made by Metallica guitarist Kirk Hammett. The poster is displayed as part of his collection at the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto. Malaysia has a deputy king who takes the king's place when the reigning king is unavailable. The position is known as the Timbalan Yang di Pertuan Agong, or deputy king, and is part of the country's unusual elective monarchy system. Both the king and his deputy are elected from among the 9 hereditary rulers of Malaysia's monarchical states, normally for 5-year terms. The deputy king can assume certain duties when the monarch is absent, ill, or temporarily incapacitated. This system makes Malaysia one of the few monarchies in the world where the head of state is periodically elected from among several royal rulers. National Hockey League arenas sound an air horn after a goal is scored because Bill Wirtz, owner of both the Chicago Arena and the Blackhawks, liked the sound of an air horn on his yacht, so he had one installed inside the arena in 1973. His uncle's company manufactured it, and most National Hockey League horns come from them. When the Beatles broke up in 1970, they were all still in their late 20s. John Lennon and Ringo Starr were 29 years old, while Paul McCartney and George Harrison were only 27. Robert Shaw, who played Quint in Jaws, died at the age of 51 while driving with his wife and son in Ireland. He suddenly felt ill, stopped the car, got out, and collapsed by the side of the road. Radbod, the last pagan king of Frisia, which is now the northern Netherlands, refused to convert to Christianity, preferring to spend eternity in hell with his ancestors rather than in heaven with beggars. Pilotless drones existed as far back as the 1950s, and one of them inadvertently caused multiple incidents of civilian property damage, several near accidents, and a wildfire covering nearly 1,000 acres, while the United States Air Force struggled to shoot it down. The most recent Democratic president of the United States to die was Jimmy Carter, who died on December 29, 2024, at the age of 100. Before him, the most recent had been Lyndon B. Johnson, who died in 1973, meaning that more than 50 years passed between the deaths of the two former Democratic presidents. Sand theft is one of the largest organized crime activities in India. The enormous demand for sand to make concrete and supply the construction industry has fueled illegal networks dedicated to extracting it from rivers, beaches, and other protected areas. These organizations, popularly known as the sand mafia, can involve large numbers of workers, transporters, and middlemen. Illegal extraction has also caused erosion, altered river channels, and damaged ecosystems. The problem is especially difficult to control because sand is a basic resource for rapid urban expansion and major infrastructure projects. During World War II, the Germans planned to assassinate Winston Churchill with an exploding chocolate bar, but the plot was discovered by British spies. The two main dingo populations, Western and Eastern, do not share a close lineage. In fact, they could represent waves of humans who brought domesticated dogs and wolves to Australia between 8,000 and 3,000 years ago. In 1946, New Zealand accidentally held its election a full 2 months late because someone forgot to mark the calendar and forgot that the previous election had been held earlier than usual. An airplane, like a Boeing 747, burns approximately 1 gallon of fuel every second while in flight. The exact amount varies depending on the version of the aircraft, altitude, speed, weight, and phase of the journey. Although the consumption seems enormous, these aircraft were designed to carry hundreds of passengers for thousands of miles without stopping. During takeoff, the engines consume fuel at a much higher rate than during cruise. In addition, a Boeing 747 can carry more than 52,000 gallons of fuel, depending on the variant. Greece's finance minister from 2013 to 2015 previously worked at Valve as its video game economics analyst. Morgan Le Fay, who is commonly known as a dark sorceress and Merlin's archenemy, was portrayed in the earliest Arthurian literature as a kind of benevolent witch. Bernard Gore, who was 71 years old, was supposed to meet his wife and daughter at a shopping mall in Sydney after doing some shopping on his own. Instead, he exited through a mall door that led into a maze of stairwells and was found dead 3 weeks later after being unable to find his way out. It is believed that North Korea's former heir apparent lost his position as successor after attempting to enter Disneyland in Japan with a fake passport. He was later exiled from the country and subsequently assassinated in 2017 after many failed attempts. Leo the mathematician designed a network of communication beacons that was built and operated in the Byzantine Empire. According to modern experiments, the various branches of the network could transmit and receive messages at a speed of approximately 450 miles per hour. Some copies of the Toy Story 2 DVD sold at Costco in the year 2000 accidentally contained a brief scene from the movie High Fidelity in the middle of the film, in which a couple of expressions inappropriate for children could be heard. The problem was caused by an error during disc manufacturing, and the affected copies were removed from stores. Arnold Schwarzenegger still owns the suit he wore during the filming of Batman and Robin. He pays Warner Brothers $1 each year to keep it. Eric Roberts is one of the most prolific actors of all time. As of August 2026, IMDb credits him with 936 acting credits, a number that continues to rise because of the large number of productions in which he participates. His film career took off with King of the Gypsies in 1978, and nearly 5 decades later, he continues to work actively. The oral history of the indigenous Klamath people describes the eruption of a volcano and the subsequent creation of Crater Lake in Oregon, events that geologists date to nearly 8,000 years ago. The disc jockey scratch was invented in 1975 when Grand Wizard Theodore was playing records at high volume, causing his mother to come into the room to scold him. This prompted him to hold the record to stop it, accidentally moving it back and forth and liking the sound it produced. The historic Understanding AIDS pamphlet was the largest single mass mailing in United States history. Led by Surgeon General C. Everett Koop, it reached 107 million American households and established standards for education about the disease. 80% of people read at least part of it. In the Netherlands, they have a tradition called dropping, in which they leave their children in the woods at night and the children have to find their way back home. The only plane authorized to fly in the United States on September 11th after the attacks was a plane flying from San Diego to Miami to deliver antivenom to a man who had been bitten by a highly venomous snake. It was escorted by 2 fighter jets. Aretha Franklin's handwritten will was found in a spiral notebook wedged between the cushions of a couch months after her death, but a court ruled that it was valid. The laboratory sets for Mel Brooks's movie Young Frankenstein were made up of pieces from the set of the original Frankenstein. Brooks was able to contact Ken Strickfaden, who had built many of the original sets and still had parts of them in his possession, and he agreed to lend them for the movie. A 2014 report found that the mortality rate among professional wrestlers was significantly higher than that of athletes in other sports. One of the rarest events in baseball is the unassisted triple play, in which a single defensive player records 3 outs on one play. There have been only 15 in Major League Baseball history, making it rarer than a perfect game. Fiberglass dresses were fashionable for a few years in the 1890s, and the New York Times even predicted that they would become more popular. Halo 2 was delayed for personal computers because someone pasted a photo of himself exposing his backside to the camera into the game's code. Roman Emperor Caligula tormented his senators by making them run in front of his chariot for miles. He was also so hairy that he made it a capital offense to mention goats in his presence. There is a German dish called Mettbrötchen that consists of raw minced pork served on a bread roll and sprinkled with raw onion. Met is usually seasoned with salt and pepper and is eaten especially fresh, following strict preparation and storage standards. It is commonly found in butcher shops, bakeries, celebrations, and informal gatherings in different regions of Germany. One particularly striking presentation is the Mettigel, in which the meat is shaped like a hedgehog and decorated with pieces of onion as spines. Prince died from an overdose caused by counterfeit opioid pills containing fentanyl. More than 86% of psychologists have sought therapy themselves, with an average of 221 sessions, and 62% identify themselves as having depression. Mariah Carey threw a Mariah Carey-themed party in 2016. She invited 50 members of her touring crew and friends and had them dress in their favorite outfits inspired by the artist's songs and videos. Pizza is considered a food for the elite in North Korea, and most citizens cannot afford it. Kim Jong-il hired Italian chefs to train North Koreans in pizza making and introduced it to the country after becoming interested in it in the 1990s. During World War II, women were hired as human computers, working in groups, and the term "kill a girl" was sometimes used to refer to 1,000 hours of female calculation work. These workers manually solved complex mathematical operations needed to create ballistic tables, study trajectories, and support scientific and military projects. Many used mechanical calculators and divided problems into smaller parts to speed up the work. In the United States, many women performed these tasks at institutions such as the Ballistic Research Laboratory, and later took part in projects involving some of the earliest electronic computers. Legendary music producers Pharrell and Timbaland are cousins. Both grew up in Virginia and developed careers that ultimately left an enormous mark on popular music. Pharrell Williams rose to fame as a member of the production duo The Neptunes, alongside Chad Hugo, while Timbaland, whose real name is Timothy Mosley, became one of the most influential producers in hip-hop and pop. Both worked with some of the biggest artists of their generation and helped define the sound of numerous hits beginning in the late 1990s. Protein folding is the process by which a newly formed protein in a cell changes from a long, unstable chain into a specific three-dimensional shape. The final structure allows the protein to perform its biological function. Many proteins fold spontaneously, while some require enzymes or certain chemical conditions. The original lyrics of Metallica's Enter Sandman were about sudden infant death. James Hetfield had initially written a much darker version inspired by the idea of a baby dying in its sleep. Producer Bob Rock and Lars Ulrich felt the theme could be improved and encouraged Hetfield to change it. The lyrics ultimately focused on nightmares, nighttime fears, and the disturbing images that can accompany childhood sleep. The song was released in 1991 as the first single from the album Metallica, popularly known as the Black Album, and eventually became one of the band's most famous songs. There is a man known as the Mountain Man who spent 22 years carving a 361-foot path through a mountain using only a hammer and chisel. He was motivated by grief after his wife died because of the very long route to the hospital, so he shortened the journey from 34 miles to 9 miles. McLaren's chief executive officer began his career by winning on the game show Wheel of Fortune. Zach Brown appeared on the show and won $3,050, which he used entirely to buy a go-kart. Michelle Kwan is the most decorated figure skater in United States history. Over the course of her career, she won 5 world championships and 9 United States national championships, including 8 consecutive national titles. She also won 2 Olympic medals, silver in Nagano in 1998 and bronze in Salt Lake City in 2002. Her dominance lasted for nearly a decade, which is exceptional in a sport where competitive careers are usually relatively short. She also won numerous international titles and became one of the most recognizable figures in American figure skating. Architect Raphael Vignoli designed 2 buildings that caused intense heat rays, one in Las Vegas and the other in London. His most problematic buildings, the tower at 20 Fenchurch Street in London and his Vdara Resort Complex in Las Vegas, had glazed windows that turned reflected sunlight into a scorching beam of light. The National Collegiate Athletic Association was originally founded to protect college athletes from the brutality of early college football. In 1904 alone, there were 159 serious injuries and 18 deaths on the field. After visiting Pyongyang in 1971, Romanian dictator Ceausescu became obsessed with North Korean ideology and implemented it in his own country. He was executed in 1989. One of Alaska's leading trial lawyers built an extravagant 17-story house in the Talkeetna wilderness, known as the Dr. Seuss House. Juliana of Fontevraud, the illegitimate daughter of King Henry I of England, tried to kill him with a crossbow after he allowed her daughters, who were his granddaughters and were being held as hostages at the time, to be blinded. In 1952, a doctor in France released a deadly virus to kill the rabbits on his property, which ended up killing 90% of France's rabbits within 2 years. By the 1830s, alcohol consumption in the United States had reached an all-time high of 7.1 gallons of pure alcohol per person per year. That is more than 3 times the current consumption rate of approximately 2.2 gallons. In the 19th century, people obtained government jobs through connections with presidents rather than through merit. This practice ended after a disgruntled job seeker assassinated President James A. Garfield, whom he believed owed him a government appointment. Key West declared its independence from the United States in 1982, then declared war and immediately surrendered in order to request foreign aid after becoming frustrated by the United States government's lack of response to its complaints about a roadblock. The axe used by Jack Nicholson to break through the door in The Shining was sold at auction in 2019 for $209,000. A member of the production crew had originally purchased it from the production company after filming ended, with the intention of using it to chop firewood. The deepest mine in the world is the Mponeng gold mine in South Africa, which reaches more than 2.5 miles below the Earth's surface. At such depths, temperatures reach more than 140 degrees Fahrenheit, requiring advanced cooling systems to keep miners safe. The first Borat movie was banned in Kazakhstan, but when the second one was released, the country created tourism campaigns centered around the phrase, "very nice." Bedbugs were first mentioned in ancient Greece as early as 400 before Christ, and later by Aristotle. Bean leaves have historically been used to trap bedbugs in homes in Eastern Europe. The trichomes on the bean leaves capture the insects by impaling their legs, and the leaves are then destroyed. Because American and British generals insisted that the French unit that helped liberate Paris be entirely white, a white French unit had to be sent from Morocco, which was supplemented with soldiers from Spain and Portugal so that it would be completely white, although not entirely French. Crystal is refractive because it is made with lead oxide. In traditional lead crystal, this compound greatly increases the material's refractive index, causing light to bend and scatter more intensely than in ordinary glass. This is why cut crystal pieces produce especially striking flashes and colored reflections. Lead oxide also makes crystal heavier and relatively easy to cut and polish. Today, lead-free crystal also exists, using other compounds to achieve similar optical properties. Terry Fox ran the equivalent of 128 marathons in just 143 days in an attempt to run across Canada to raise money for cancer research, all despite having lost a leg to the disease. His Marathon of Hope led to the annual Terry Fox Run, which continues to support cancer research around the world. In 1894, William Stewart Halsted, the first chief of surgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital, invented rubber gloves for his wife, Caroline Hampton, after noticing that her hands were being affected by the daily surgeries she performed. The 1991 movie Ricochet, starring Denzel Washington and John Lithgow, is set in the same fictional universe as Die Hard. Mark Ruffalo woke up from a dream telling him that he had a brain tumor. He had a computed tomography scan the next day, confirming that he had a benign tumor behind his left ear. The tumor was removed, and he is now deaf in that ear as a result of the surgery. During sleep, brainwaves help clear waste from the brain. Individual nerve cells coordinate to produce rhythmic waves that drive fluid through dense brain tissue, washing the tissue in the process. The codes that allow the President of the United States to authorize a nuclear attack are printed on a plastic card nicknamed the biscuit. The President is supposed to carry the biscuit at all times. David Icke is a former English soccer player who, after meeting a psychic, proclaimed himself the son of the divine and began writing an extensive series of conspiracy theories about interdimensional energy beings and half-human reptilian members of the global elite called archons. During the final months of World War II, the Germans, British, and Americans agreed to a limited ceasefire to allow the Allies to drop food from the air to starving Dutch civilians. The operation began in late April 1945, during the so-called Hunger Winter in the Netherlands. British and American bombers flew at low altitude to drop tons of food over previously agreed areas without being attacked by German forces. The missions, known mainly as Operation Manna and Operation Chowhound, delivered flour, canned food, chocolate, and other supplies to a population that had been suffering from severe shortages for months. Until early 2024, it was legal for apartments in Austin, Texas to have no windows, and landlords often did not disclose this in listings. Luxury designer Jonathan Schwingy designed a tetrahedral superyacht that lifts the yacht above the water to avoid turbulence. However, no one has funded the project yet. There is a federal witness tree protection program to protect individual trees whose presence was documented at important historical events and that are still standing today. After a boy in the 1930s found what appeared to be a large piece of coal, his family used it as a doorstop for a decade until his father took a closer look. This led to the realization that it was the largest black sapphire in the world. After being cut, the Black Star of Queensland weighs 733 carats. The Capitol Hill Mystery Soda Machine is a vending machine in Capitol Hill, Seattle, known for its mysterious buttons that dispensed unusual beverage flavors. No one knew who restocked the machine, which originally led to the development of a local legend that the machine was haunted. A Space Shuttle Challenger engineer, Alan McDonald, raised safety concerns against the wishes of his employer and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. He was ignored, and a fatal accident occurred. When McDonald spoke out, the company reassigned him to a lower position. Congress intervened to help him, and he later taught ethical decision-making. After his death, it was revealed that Stan Lee, the famous Marvel Comics writer, suffered elder abuse at the hands of several handlers and family members who isolated him from other relatives and fired accountants, lawyers, and caregivers who had been with him for decades. Nancy Faust was the organist for the Chicago White Sox from 1970 to 2010 and was the first stadium organist to begin playing melodies from commercials, as well as television shows and popular songs. She missed only 5 games in her 40 years because of the birth of her son, and she is recognized in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Before Esther Williams became an actress, she planned to compete in the 1940 Olympic Games, but that year's Olympics were canceled because of the outbreak of World War II. The debut album by the band Silverchair, Frog Stop, which sold millions of copies, was written when all of the band members were only 15 years old. The death of Lawrence of Arabia in a motorcycle accident led one of his doctors to study what he considered the unnecessary loss of life among motorcycle messengers due to head injuries, leading to greater use of protective helmets by both military and civilian motorcyclists. Before his career as a comedian, Chevy Chase was the drummer for the college band Leather Canary, a group that included Walter Becker and Donald Fagen, who would later form Steely Dan. Reverse Polish notation is a different way of writing mathematical equations. 3 plus 4 is written as 3 4 plus. One advantage is that it eliminates the need for an order of operations. Despite having herbivorous diets similar to those of cattle, which release large amounts of digestive methane through exhalation and belching, kangaroos release virtually none. The hydrogen byproduct is converted into acetate instead, which is then used to provide additional energy. Matt Damon wanted the video game The Bourne Conspiracy to be a puzzle game and refused to lend his voice to the game when it became a shooter. Littering on public roads can carry a prison sentence of up to 6 years in Tennessee. Penalties depend on factors such as the amount and type of waste discarded, and the most serious cases can be treated as felonies. In addition to possible jail time, the law provides for fines and other penalties. Tennessee also has specific laws against illegal dumping, especially when large amounts of trash are abandoned along roads, on property, or in public spaces. 104 elevators operate in Willis Tower, the Chicago skyscraper, requiring 80 miles of elevator cable. This includes 16 double-decker elevators. Some of the elevators are among the fastest in the world, capable of reaching speeds of up to nearly 16 feet per second. The third season of the television show Finding Your Roots was delayed after it was discovered that the show had heavily edited an episode featuring Ben Affleck. Affleck pressured the show to do so after he was shown that one of his ancestors had owned slaves. In 1997, a giant wave caused a cargo ship to spill 4.8 million Lego pieces into the ocean, an event known as the Great Lego Spill. Many are still being found today. The Medallion Fund is a secretive investment fund that has consistently outperformed the market with an average annual return of 62% over the past 30 years. Louisiana law incorrectly lists and restricts a variety of edible ground cherry as a hallucinogen, despite its long history of use as food by indigenous peoples. During auditions for That's So Raven, Raven-Symoné originally auditioned for the role of Chelsea Daniels, the main character's best friend, but Raven was given the lead role because audiences responded so well to her. Kokomo in the Florida Keys, from the Beach Boy song, is not a real place. King James I of England spoke out against the dangers of tobacco in 1604, calling it dangerous to the lungs and brain, and attempted to impose heavy taxes on it. The first female detective in the United States, Kate Warren, foiled an assassination attempt against President Lincoln when she was 23 years old. Samuel L. Jackson's famous line, "I am sick of these damn snakes on this damn plane," in the theatrical version of Snakes on a Plane, did not come from the original script. It was actually inspired by a fan-made trailer for the movie. Operation Denver was a disinformation campaign carried out by the KGB in the 1980s to spread the idea that the United States had invented human immunodeficiency virus and acquired immunodeficiency syndrome as part of a biological weapons research project at Fort Detrick, Maryland. A study of 80 pairs of jeans found that women's pockets are generally half the size of men's pockets from the same brand. Only 40% of them can comfortably fit an iPhone, and only 10% can fit an entire hand. By comparison, 100% of the men's jeans can accommodate either one. Although Green Bay, Wisconsin is the smallest major professional sports market in North America, the Green Bay Packers of the National Football League ranked as the 27th most valuable sports franchise in the world in 2019, with a value of $2,630 million. The reason most writing symbols in South and Southeast Asia are curved and rounded is that they were easier to carve into palm leaves. The oldest surviving documents written in Sanskrit, dating back 2,000 years, were written on palm leaves. Ghost moons are rotating clouds of dust that share Earth's orbit, remaining ahead of or behind Earth as it travels around the Sun. Officially called Kordylewski clouds, ghost moons were first reported in the 1960s and were only tentatively confirmed in 2018. There is a restaurant in California called Lustag, where you can eat for free if you are taller than the chef. The chef is Bernard Meringue, and he is nearly 6 feet 11 inches tall. The United States produces more crude oil than any other country in history. In recent years, its production has reached unprecedented levels, exceeding 13 million barrels per day and surpassing the previous record highs set by other major producers. Much of this growth comes from regions such as the Permian Basin, located primarily between Texas and New Mexico. The development of horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing profoundly transformed the American oil industry and made it possible to tap enormous oil formations that had previously been difficult to exploit. Humans with darker skin need more sunlight to produce vitamin D. In an experiment in which a light-skinned person spent 8 hours in the sun, their vitamin D concentration increased 50-fold, while a darker-skinned individual showed no change. They needed 5 to 10 times as much sunlight exposure before seeing a 30-fold increase. Mentos saw a chemistry professor create a soda geyser several feet high by dropping Mentos into Diet Coke on a television show. They came up with a campaign to encourage user-generated videos and hired content creators to generate a trend that resulted in a 20% increase in sales. In 1959, 30 Western television series aired during prime time in the United States. None were canceled that season, while 14 new ones appeared in a single week in March. In 1959, 8 of the 10 most-watched programs were Westerns. In addition, an estimated $125 million worth of toys based on television Westerns were sold that year. The people who called into the television show Frasier were actually famous people and included Christopher Reeve, Eddie Van Halen, Ben Stiller, Elijah Wood, Timothy Leary, Halle Berry, and many others. Hole Watcher is a real job title. Their role is to ensure the safety of people working in holes or other confined spaces by making sure there is adequate ventilation and rescuing them if they become trapped, injured, or lose consciousness due to a lack of oxygen. The Great Oxidation Event was caused by a single type of oxygen-producing bacteria that became responsible for transforming Earth from a planet without oxygen into the Earth we know today. This gave rise to oxygen-based life and caused a mass extinction of anaerobic life forms, eliminating around 80% of them. The movie Animal House was able to film at the University of Oregon largely because the university president had previously refused to allow The Graduate to be filmed there because he believed it lacked artistic merit. Scientists recreated an eye remedy found in a 9th century manuscript made from onion and garlic and discovered that it could eliminate 90% of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. The Happy Birthday song is now in the public domain. Before that, $1,500 or more had to be paid to use it in movies and television shows. After a short legal battle, a judge ruled in 2016 that, due to the age of the song, the copyright holders could no longer charge for it. Tigers can eat up to approximately 60 pounds of meat in a single night. Although they do not hunt every day, when they do, they can consume large amounts at once, since in the wild, they do not always know when their next meal will be. An adult tiger can devour a considerable portion of its prey in just a few hours and then rest while it digests. It may return to the carcass for several days until it has used up almost all the available meat. The company Microsoft earns $2 billion a year thanks to the Android operating system, even though it does not belong to them. This amount comes from royalties on certain patents they own that are used. 90% of the cells in our body are not ours. They belong to the bacteria that live in our organism, which are extremely numerous. The hole in the ozone layer over Antarctica is approximately 7,700,000 square miles. In some years, especially in the early 2000s, its maximum extent has exceeded nearly 8 million square miles during the austral spring, although its size varies depending on atmospheric conditions. The phenomenon is mainly due to chlorofluorocarbons released in past decades, which destroy ozone molecules in the presence of sunlight. George Lucas planned to make 11 more Star Wars movies after the success of the first one, and the character Boba Fett was created to be the main villain of the trilogy. However, when it was decided that there would only be 3 movies, his importance was reduced, and he met an abrupt end. The minimum space allowed for a chicken farm is around approximately 0.0039 square feet per chicken. That means the space each animal has is roughly the size of a sheet of letter paper. During the occupation of France by the Nazis in the Second World War, the French resistance cut the cables of the elevator of the Eiffel Tower so that Hitler would have to climb the stairs. The Mexican YouTuber Luisito Comunica has visited more than 50 countries, ending up with 3 passports. However, the record for the YouTuber who has visited the most countries belongs to Drew Binsky, who managed to visit all 197 countries recognized by the United Nations. In many of them, however, he only stayed briefly while passing through to reach another country. White chocolate is not chocolate. It is made entirely of fat and sugar. It does not contain cocoa solids, only cocoa butter, sugar, and milk. The 1960s Batman, portrayed by Adam West, was known for his moral lessons that included the importance of wearing seatbelts, doing homework, eating vegetables, and drinking milk. The superhero Flash, first published in 1940, was the first comic book character whose story was rebooted. He was also the first to travel to an alternate universe and meet himself, and the first to have an apprentice who later inherited his role. Nearly all popular characters afterward would have similar storylines. The planet Venus rotates so slowly that you could follow the sunset forever if you kept walking. A Venusian day lasts longer than its own full year around the sun. The difference between a slow metabolism and a fast one is 200 calories, or approximately 17 fluid ounces of Coca-Cola. The YouTuber Kev Jumbo once created a second YouTube channel and donated 100% of the advertising revenue it generated to a community in Kenya, which used the money to build its first high school and named it after him as a sign of gratitude. Tomatoes have more genes than humans, approximately 7,000 more. This does not make them more complex, since complexity depends on how genes are used. Disney gave actor Robin Williams a Picasso painting as a thank you for his participation as the genie in the movie Aladdin, where he was only paid $75,000. The actor was accusing them of breaking a specific agreement they had. He had agreed to voice the genie and receive that salary on the condition that his voice would not be used in merchandise such as toys or promotions. He even declared that he would not work with them again. The Picasso painting, as an apology, did not work. What would become the first episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog was nominated at the Academy Awards in 1996 in the category of Best Animated Short Film, but the winner was a Wallace and Gromit short. However, this helped it become a full series with 52 episodes. In episode 14 of Season 8 of The Simpsons, The Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie Show, a cartoon version of George Meyer, one of the writers of the series, is fired. 1 year later, in episode 9 of Season 9, The Real World, when Marge goes to the unemployment office, the same character can be seen waiting there in line. Weird Sisters, the fictional band that appears in a scene of the movie Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, features cameos by real-life musicians, the lead singer of Pulp, Jarvis Cocker, and Johnny Greenwood and Phil Selway of Radiohead. Humans have cryptochrome photoreceptors, which are the proteins needed to detect magnetic fields in the same way as other animals. But the difference is that our brains cannot decode the information. Therefore, we cannot perceive those magnetic fields. Musician Willie Nelson has played the same guitar for 50 years. It is signed by many people, including his family, friends, his lawyers, and even Johnny Cash. He has played more than 10,000 concerts with it. Every year, he takes it to the same shop for repairs. Seals, sea lions, and walruses are close relatives of bears. These animals share a common ancestor that lived more than 50 million years ago. This ancestor was a land mammal similar to an otter that gradually adapted to aquatic life, giving rise to modern seals. The reason different pasta shapes are made, even though they use the same ingredient, has to do with the type of sauce they are meant to be paired with. Larger and hollow shapes are for thicker sauces, while smaller ones are for thinner sauces. The movie Back to the Future, which is now a classic favorite of many, was rejected more than 40 times by production companies for different reasons. Even Disney rejected the movie. Finally, Steven Spielberg convinced Universal, and it became a huge success. The brain of cats is biologically more similar to the human brain than the brain of dogs. The brain regions of humans and cats are alike, especially those responsible for generating and processing emotions. The longest police chase lasted almost 2 consecutive days and covered approximately 619 miles. It began in Germany and ended in Ukraine. It took place in April of 2002. Singer Van Morrison recorded 30 songs in a single day in 1967. He did it because he had a contract that was unfavorable to him in which he still owed 30 songs to the record label, so he set out to record meaningless songs, among which Choo Choo stands out. It was a very productive day for him. The first move of pawns in chess, where they can advance 2 squares if the player chooses, did not exist in the earliest versions of the game. According to documents that have been found, it was first used in the year 1280 in Spain. Claw machines that dispense stuffed toys usually have a setting controlled by the owner that determines a success percentage. If the percentage is very low, almost all the toys will fall before they can be retrieved. And this has nothing to do with the player's skill. The famous bowler hat was not invented with the purpose of being a fashion item. It was made so carriage and coach drivers could protect themselves from obstacles like tree branches, like a kind of helmet. The last player to appear in an official National Hockey League game without wearing a helmet was Craig McTavish in 1997. At that time, veteran players drafted in 1979 or earlier were not required to wear helmets, until the rule was established for everyone in 97. The largest diurnal butterfly in the world is the Queen Alexandra's birdwing butterfly. It inhabits New Guinea and can reach a wingspan of up to approximately 12.2 inches. According to calculations by scientists, we should have already had contact with extraterrestrial beings due to the probabilities. Since there are millions of planets and stars, many must be similar to Earth, and of those civilizations, many should have already developed interstellar travel. After all, either we are alone in the universe, or they are skilled enough to remain undetected. The French astronomer Guillaume Le Gentil spent a long time trying to observe the transits of Venus in the 18th century to measure the distance to the Sun. However, when he traveled to India to finally make the measurement, clouds ruined his observation. Then he became ill, and when he finally returned to France, his possessions had already been given away and his wife had married someone else. After some time, he managed to rebuild his life and his scientific legacy, but not his wife. Only 67% of people who have Netflix still have cable television. The main reason Andy does not have a father in the movie Toy Story from 1994 is that, at the time, creating a complete digital human character was very expensive and labor-intensive for Pixar, and it was not necessary for the story. There are 5 species of flying snakes, but they do not fly like birds. They glide from one tree to another, similar to flying squirrels. The first cat to travel to space was Félicette, launched by France in 1963 in an experiment where her brain waves and vital signs were measured. Félicette, also nicknamed Astrocat, survived the trip and landed safely, something that was not common in these experiments of sending animals into space. While filming the movie Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, actress Helena Bonham Carter came up with the idea of putting her magic wand into actor Matthew Lewis's ear to make the scene where her character had to torture him look more realistic. However, Lewis moved when he heard an explosion, and the wand perforated his eardrum. He could not hear anything for 1 week, but after that, he recovered. There is a company called Poop Prints that offers DNA testing taken directly from dog waste. This service helps people discover which dog is responsible for the unwanted surprises left in their yards or sidewalk. It has been observed that psychopaths are immune to contagious yawning and are unlikely to show the typical jump response when startled. There is a bank in Dubai that offers a credit card embedded with diamonds. It is promoted as the most prestigious and exclusive card in the world. In a glorious moment of the 1970s, the voice of Yoda from Star Wars and Peggy from the Muppets were performed by the same person. Corn, just as we know it, cannot exist in the wild. It can only exist if it is cultivated by humans. There is evidence that we have been cultivating it for about 7,000 years. The distance between Europe and Africa is only about 9 miles at the narrowest point of the Strait of Gibraltar. It would theoretically be possible to build a tunnel or a bridge connecting the 2 continents. Avenida 9 de Julio, located in Buenos Aires, Argentina, is one of the widest avenues in the world. It measures more than approximately 459 feet and has 14 lanes. Billionaire Forrest Fenn hid a treasure in the Rocky Mountains that was estimated to be worth between $1 and $3 million. To find it, you had to solve a series of riddles that he designed and published in a poem. The treasure was found in 2020 by a man named Jack Stoof in the state of Wyoming. Over the years, the search mobilized thousands of people and was even linked to several deaths before it finally ended. In 2017, an 8-year-old boy learned how to drive by watching YouTube tutorials so he could go to McDonald's for a hamburger. He managed to get there by perfectly following traffic rules and bought the hamburger with money he had saved in his piggy bank. On his way back home, police officers found him and contacted his parents. In medieval Great Britain, it was believed that small, evil creatures lived between the leaves of Brussels sprouts, so before cooking them, people marked them with a cross at the base. Maybe the taste made them believe that. The retail chain Costco sells approximately 60 million rotisserie chickens each year. In fact, the roasted chicken is one of its most iconic products and is kept at a low price as a strategy to attract customers to the stores. The company even built its own poultry production facilities in the United States to control costs and ensure supply. These chickens are sold with very small profit margins, but they drive the purchase of many other products inside the warehouse. The record for the Instagram account that reached 1 million followers the fastest belongs to Kim Tae-hyung, also known as V, a member of the Korean pop band BTS. He reached 1 million followers 43 minutes after opening his account on December 6, 2021. The opening scene of the 1992 movie Wayne's World, which became famous because the main characters were singing the Queen song Bohemian Rhapsody, which helped relaunch and revive the success of that song, almost did not happen. They were going to use a Guns N' Roses song, but it ultimately happened because Mike Myers, the main actor, said he would quit if they did not use the Queen song. The leader of the country of Myanmar, formerly called Burma, was advised by a fortune teller who told him that his country was leaning too far to the left, politically speaking. To fix it, he forced the population to drive on the right side of the roads, which caused accidents and a lot of confusion. The first time Beethoven performed the Ninth Symphony, it had such an impact on the audience that the standing ovation lasted for an extremely long time. The police even had to intervene, since only members of royalty were allowed to receive that level of applause. The surface area of Russia is larger than the dwarf planet Pluto. Russia has more than approximately 6.6 million square miles, while Pluto is smaller in total size. The bear Lotso from Toy Story 3 was going to appear in the first movie, but they saved him because the technology to animate his fur did not yet exist. More than half of all the cheese consumed in the world is of the Gouda variety, which originated in the city of Gouda in the Netherlands and is now a generic term, meaning it can be produced anywhere in the world. Apple could have paid off all of Greece's external debt if it had wanted to with the money it has available, and would still have had $2 billion left over. Kodokushi, which means lonely death, is a common phenomenon in Japan in which people die alone and remain undiscovered for a long time. Archaeological investigations carried out in the city of Pompeii, which was buried by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in the year 79, revealed that there was a restaurant offering a giraffe leg dish. Apparently, it was considered an exotic but popular food at the time. The Atari 2600 video game console had wireless controllers that were released in 1982 and worked the same way as a television remote control through infrared, except they were much larger and heavier than normal wired Atari controllers. The Tanganyika laughter epidemic was a phenomenon that occurred in 1962 at a school in Tanzania, where a group of students began laughing uncontrollably. The laughter spread, affecting hundreds of people and forcing schools to close. It is believed to have been a case of mass hysteria due to stress. Around 70% of people experience a sudden muscle spasm at some point when they are about to fall asleep. This is normal and is called a myoclonic jerk, which can include a sensation similar to falling. Owners of a Bugatti super luxury car own an average of 84 other cars, 3 private jets, and 1 yacht. There are flowers that only bloom at night that evolved to attract nocturnal pollinators such as moths or bats. These flowers usually have light colors such as white or pale yellow and emit intense fragrances to make them easier to locate in the dark. The municipality of Olivenza in Spain, located near the border with Portugal, is included among areas of international conflict. This is because Portugal has not renounced its claim to the territory, which was ceded to Spain during the Napoleonic Wars. The pyramids of Egypt are actually closer to the city of Cairo than they appear. The photos we see are usually taken intentionally to show empty space. Of course, those who have been there already know this, but others of us have not visited that place. In South Australia, the best-selling beverage is Farmers Union iced coffee, an iced coffee that consistently outsells Coca-Cola. It is the only region in the world where a non-carbonated milk-based drink is more popular than cola soda. In 1964, Andy Warhol, the artist known for his pop artworks, directed a movie in which Batman fought Dracula. It was completed but could not be released to the public because it did not obtain the license to use DC Comics characters. Had it been released, it would have become the first official Batman movie. Some baby turtles communicate with each other before hatching, so they can coordinate when they will be born and do it at the same time. Dragonflies can fly backward, something that practically no other insect or animal can do. And they also have great vision with their compound eyes that allow them to see in almost 360 degrees. They also have 6 legs, but despite that, they cannot walk. They use their legs only to perch on plants. Before the 2002 elections for mayor of Poland's capital, Warsaw, the candidates competed in a game of SimCity 3000, where they were given a map similar to the real city to see how they would improve it. The candidate who won the game also won the election and later became the president of Poland. It is illegal for pet stores in Beverly Hills to sell dogs that do not come from shelters or that were not rescued from the street. This measure seeks to combat irresponsible breeding and encourage responsible adoption. King Fahd International Airport, which is located in Saudi Arabia, is currently the largest airport in the world by area, covering approximately 301 square miles. Despite this, it does not have the highest number of passengers. The airport with the most annual passenger traffic is Hartsfield-Jackson in Atlanta, United States, with 93.7 million passengers per year. An even larger one is already being built in Saudi Arabia and will be completed in 2030. The video game store Steam emerged in 2003 because the company Valve had many problems keeping the game Counter-Strike and its servers updated. With Steam, they achieved a direct platform with users where they could sell the game and maintain it. Children who have not yet lost their baby teeth have their adult teeth right below their eyes, and little by little, they move down until they cause the baby teeth to fall out. That really looks creepy. At the mouth of the Amazon River in Brazil, there is an island of approximately 30,000 square miles called Marajo Island, which is one of the places with the greatest biodiversity in the world. It was inhabited by the Marajoara culture, one of the oldest civilizations in Brazil, known for its decorated pottery. In 1983, an Air Canada plane with 69 people on board ran out of fuel mid-flight. The mistake was that they loaded 22,300 pounds of fuel instead of approximately 5,889 gallons. Fortunately, the pilot managed to land the plane by gliding, keeping everyone safe. Dung beetles can roll their dung balls in a straight line when they can see the sky and the stars at night, but they cannot do it when it is cloudy. This led scientists to conclude that they use the Milky Way to navigate. How romantic. The skin of octopuses can change color up to 177 times each hour. There are only 3 sports in which the United States has never won an Olympic medal: handball, badminton, and table tennis, sports that are dominated by other countries such as China. The warning that watching television too closely could permanently damage your eyesight is a myth. Unless you used a television from the 1950s, which emitted 100,000 times more radiation than recommended, that is where that warning came from. The Tsar Bomba of Russia was the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated. But despite that, it was also the cleanest, since its modifications prevented 97% of the side effects. The photon sphere is a spherical region in space where gravity is so strong that photons must travel in orbits. If you could transport yourself to that region and look forward, you would see the back of your own head due to the optical effect that occurs. In the 1980s, Marvel held a contest for writers. The winner was Randy Schueller, who created a story about a black suit that enhanced Spider-Man's powers. Marvel's writers took the idea and added some elements, and that is how Venom was created. During the Tokyo real estate bubble in 1980, the area of the Imperial Palace, approximately 1 1/3 square miles, was valued at more than all the properties in the state of California, United States, combined. In German folklore, Santa Claus usually brings gifts to children as he is known around the world, but he also has different alter egos, including Schmutzi and Belchnickel, which are like his evil versions that not only bring gifts, but also carry sticks to punish those who misbehaved during the year. Pinball machines were banned in New York for many years. In 1942, the governor at that time ordered thousands of machines to be destroyed. It was not until 1976 that they became legal again after it was demonstrated that they were not only for gambling, but also required skill to win. Pat Morita suffered from tuberculosis at an early age, which caused him to have to wear orthopedic body casts constantly between the ages of 2 and 11. He was told he would never walk again. But fortunately, that did not happen. Later, he played several famous roles, the most well-known being Mr. Miyagi in the Karate Kid movies. The boy bands Backstreet Boys and NSYNC had the same manager, who carried out a scam and took $300 million that belonged to investors. This individual was imprisoned for fraud in 2008. There are rare cases in which people who suffered injuries to certain parts of the brain developed gourmand syndrome, which causes the person to become obsessed with eating fine, expensive, and gourmet foods. They think about it all the time. In 2008, the police in Great Britain granted a firearms license to a 7-year-old boy. The permit was not to carry firearms in public, as one might imagine, but a legal certificate to use an air rifle under strict supervision. In the United Kingdom, minors can obtain this type of license under specific circumstances, as long as there is parental consent and strict safety regulations are followed. The protagonist of the video game Half-Life, in its prototype version, was a rugged, bearded man called Ivan the Space Biker. But as production progressed, he was replaced by the iconic Gordon Freeman that everyone knows. Before radar existed, these devices were used to try to hear air attacks before they arrived. They consisted of tubes used to amplify sound. These acoustic locators quickly became obsolete. The first Mortal Kombat game was based on a Jean-Claude Van Damme game that failed. They kept the character anyway and named him Johnny Cage. In the Roman Empire, there was a daily gazette called the Acta Diurna. It contained important events and news. It was written on stone or metal and also painted on white walls called albums. This practice was started by Emperor Julius Caesar and lasted for more than 250 years. In a survey conducted among commercial airline pilots, 56% admitted that they had fallen asleep at some point during a flight, and many of them also commented that when they woke up, they saw that their co-pilot had also fallen asleep. The Woman of the Seine was an unknown woman who was pulled from the bottom of the Seine River in 1880. At the morgue, the mortician was so impressed by her beauty that he made a mold of her face. Today, her face is used for first aid training mannequins. She is the most kissed face in the world. Technology companies that emerge in Nigeria often hide or change their IP address so that potential clients and investors cannot identify that they are from that country, since it has a bad reputation due to email fraud. The farthest point from any human on planet Earth, Point Nemo, is often closer to the International Space Station than to land. That means the closest human to that location is often in space. Telephone directories in Iceland are organized by first name rather than last name, since in that country, surnames are formed from the father's name with the addition of son or daughter. A team of Mexican scientists turned tequila into diamonds. They achieved this by heating it to 1,472 degrees Fahrenheit. This was possible because this drink contains carbon and other elements that facilitated the process. The phrases at the end of the Guns N' Roses song, "Sweet Child O' Mine," are literal. Singer Axl Rose asked the producer, "Where do we go now?" because they did not know how to end the song. So the producer suggested that he say exactly that. In Israel, the movie Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs was changed to Cloudy with a Chance of Falafel, which is a food that looks like meatballs but is made from chickpeas or fava beans. Soccer players in Turkey have their first name on the back of their jerseys instead of their last name. This is because soccer was played in Turkey before surnames were used, which began in 1934. In 2012, a super solar storm occurred that almost directly impacted planet Earth. If it had, it would have damaged satellites and caused power and internet outages so large that they would have affected most of the population for many weeks or even months. Global debt amounts to $348 trillion. That figure is equivalent to around 3 times the gross domestic product of all countries combined. Bees have such a high density of hair that they have approximately the same amount as squirrels, 3 million individual hairs. In comparison, humans have an average of 100,000 hairs on their head. In Europe, the meat industry is so subsidized that each cow generates $2.5 per day. This is more money than 1 billion people in the world earn daily. Cornflakes, the popular breakfast cereal, contain more genes than people. It does not make sense, but that is how it is. When the first completely free and democratic elections were held in Poland, a new party called Polish Beer Lovers won 360,000 votes and gained 16 seats in parliament. The highest mountain in the Americas is Aconcagua, which is located in the province of Mendoza in Argentina and measures approximately 22,838 feet. The German interrogator Hans Scharf was against using physical torture methods. Instead, he took prisoners out for walks and invited them to eat, where they revealed information on their own. After the war, he moved to the United States, where he became a mosaic artist. When we remember things in the third person, meaning from the perspective of others rather than our own, they are called autobiographical memories. This usually happens with very distant memories from childhood that the mind has distorted. Some lizards have learned to balance tree branches on their heads to attract birds that are in nesting season and are constantly searching for materials. This is the first observed case of predators using different hunting methods depending on the season. The musician from the well-known new wave band Devo, Mark Mothersbaugh, composed the main theme for the Nickelodeon series Rugrats. He later worked on the soundtracks of films such as the Lego Movie, Thor Ragnarok, and is going to participate in the music for the Minecraft movie. Over the last 5,000 years, genetic change in humans has been 100 times faster than at any other stage of human evolution. This means that modern humans are genetically more different from people who lived 5,000 years ago than those people were from humans who lived 40,000 years ago. In most countries, it is illegal to declaw cats, a practice that many people still do even though it causes them significant harm. Please do not do it. Although the color violet and the color purple are very similar, purple does not actually exist naturally. It is a composite color formed by mixing blue and red, while violet is pure, since it is present in the visible spectrum of light with a specific wavelength. The number 95 appears in many Pixar movies. This is a reference to the year the company's first feature-length film, Toy Story, was released in 1995. In a city in Iowa, United States, in 1998, a plan to build a pedestrian bridge was rejected because it was considered too modern. What they did not know was that the design was actually based on plans created by Leonardo da Vinci in 1504. In 1980, a Star Wars Christmas album was released. It featured the participation of Bon Jovi, who, at that time, had not yet achieved worldwide fame with his band. He collaborated on the song R2-D2, We Wish You a Merry Christmas. The bassist of the band Guns N' Roses, Duff McKagan, did not know how to spend his money. So he decided instead to invest $100,000 in companies from his hometown of Seattle that were just starting or beginning to grow, including Starbucks and Amazon when it was only an online bookstore. Today, his net worth is estimated at $70 million. The order of the letters on your keyboard, commonly called QWERTY, was designed specifically so typewriters would not jam due to their mechanism, but it was adopted as the standard form. However, there are other ways to arrange the letters that help people type faster, such as the Dvorak keyboard, but almost nobody uses them. There are space tornadoes. These have been observed on the surface of the sun and are thousands of times larger and more powerful than those that occur on Earth. Horses cannot vomit. They do not have the necessary muscles to do so. Their esophageal sphincter is very strong and only allows passage in one direction. In some comic book issues, starting with Tales of Suspense 45 from 1963, Iron Man uses skates that allow him to travel at more than approximately 186 miles per hour. According to the dialogue, they are powered by jet engines and fueled by transistor energy, although that is not how transistors work, but oh well. It is believed that Mercury is actually the mostly exposed core of a planet that used to be almost 5 times larger, but lost its mantle and crust in a collision with a protoplanet. If you publish a book in Norway, the government will buy 1,000 copies and distribute them in bookstores throughout the country. Bill Gates founded in 1989 a company separate from Microsoft called Interactive Home Systems, with the purpose of decorating customers' homes with digital art by famous painters using frames with screens, technology that had not yet been developed. Currently, the company changed its name and is dedicated to marketing. At the 1958 World's Fair, the original manuscript of Mozart's Requiem was displayed, and during the time it was there, someone took it and tore off a piece containing a musical inscription believed to be the last thing Mozart ever wrote in his life. To this day, nothing is known about this missing fragment. Students who write notes by hand tend to understand the material better than those who take notes on tablets or laptops. This happens because they process information more actively and selectively. The first time the word nerd was used was in 1950 in the book If I Ran the Zoo by Dr. Seuss, a well-known author of children's books. In this work, the term was used to describe an imaginary creature, and, over time, the word became part of popular language to refer to people with intellectual or technological interests. If someone wanted to build a pyramid similar to the Great Pyramid of Egypt using concrete blocks, it is estimated that construction would take about 5 years and cost $5 billion. In ancient Egypt, actors were not allowed to testify in court because they were seen as professional liars. Their profession consisted of portraying other identities, which created legal distrust. Capitonyms are words that change meaning depending on whether the first letter is uppercase or lowercase. For example, Lima in lowercase is a fruit, while Lima with an uppercase letter is the capital of Peru, or Qatar, which is a country, or what tasters do, and so on. On one occasion, Queen Elizabeth II invited King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia for a ride in her Land Rover. This happened during a visit to Scotland, and at one point the king asked his translator to tell her to slow down and focus on the road. This occurred in 2003. Women were not allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia, and it is believed the queen was driving fast on purpose to annoy him. There are libraries of things where you can go borrow something you need as if it were a book. You can check out all kinds of useful tools. The largest and most complex Japanese character of all is called Taito. It is made up of 84 strokes and means the appearance of a dragon in full flight. It clearly looks like a dragon, you can tell right away. In a harvest of approximately 5,511 pounds of pearl oysters at a specialized farm, only 3 or 4 oysters produce pearls. Finding them naturally is very difficult. In Las Vegas, there is a place where they let you operate construction equipment on a very large lot full of sand. There is definitely fun there for all tastes. On August 14, 1945, more than 1,000 Japanese officers entered the Imperial Palace to destroy the emperor's recording. It was when he surrendered in the Second World War, the first time the Japanese heard his voice. But since the palace is built in very complex, labyrinth-like shapes, they could not find the recording, which shortly afterward went on the air. They would have been better off each taking over a room and waiting for the bubble of 1980. The true color of the sun is white. That is how it appears from high altitude or from space. But when viewed from our perspective, the atmosphere causes it to appear yellowish. We should never look directly at the sun because it can damage our eyesight. It is better to look at it in photographs. When Steven Spielberg was 7 years old, his parents woke him up one night to watch a meteor shower. From that moment, he thought that if he ever made a science fiction movie, aliens would arrive in peace. A few years later, he made the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In 1959, the winner of a local election in Sao Paulo, Brazil, was a rhinoceros named Cacareco, who lived in the city zoo. His candidacy was promoted by students. Voters chose the animal because, according to one of them, they preferred a rhinoceros to a donkey. Samsung had the opportunity to buy the Android operating system in 2004, but they did not because they did not see enough potential. Today, it is the most widely used mobile operating system in the world. When the first Toy Story character costumes appeared at Disney theme parks, if people shouted, "Andy is coming," they would immediately drop to the ground and remain motionless. However, since many people began abusing this, just a few days later they stopped doing it for safety reasons. The Roman Emperor Augustus saw a man who wanted to throw a slave to be eaten by sea lampreys as punishment for breaking a cup. Upon seeing this, Augustus freed the slave and ordered all of the man's cups to be broken. There is an orchid that grows in the jungles of Peru and Ecuador that evolved to resemble the face of a monkey in order to protect itself from predators. Actor and politician Arnold Schwarzenegger was the first civilian to own a Hummer vehicle when they began selling them to the general public and not only to the military. Eddie Murphy was almost not hired on the show Saturday Night Live, a job that launched his successful career, because they had already chosen an African-American member for the cast. Charles Lindbergh was the first person to cross the Atlantic Ocean in an airplane in a non-stop flight in 1927. A few years later, he surprised many people when he stated that during the flight, some creatures called gremlins appeared in the cockpit and gave him aviation tips that helped him arrive, which were most likely hallucinations. A woman named Isabella Tanikumi sued Disney because, according to her, Frozen had taken the story of her life written in her memoirs, which, although it did not include magical powers, did include sisters, snow-covered mountains, and scenes under moonlight. The lawsuit was for $250 million, and guess what happened? She lost. There is an extremely rare variant of tiger called the golden tiger. Currently, there are fewer than 30 individuals. Also known as the golden tabby tiger, it is not a distinct subspecies, but a genetic variation of the Bengal tiger that affects fur pigmentation, producing a lighter tone and softer, wider stripes. This condition is the result of a rare recessive gene, and most of the individuals that exist today are in captivity, since in the wild, their survival would be more complicated due to their reduced ability to camouflage. The first photo on Instagram to use the hashtag selfie was uploaded on January 27, 2011 by the user Jen Lee. It was the first day Instagram implemented the use of hashtags. Even though many movies have made us believe that there are many dark, dead-end alleys in New York City, in real life, there are very few. And most scenes that take place in these locations are filmed in a single alley, Cortlandt Alley. The lobsters that are usually eaten are young and are only a fraction of the size they can reach. Older or larger specimens have less flavor, but they can reproduce more easily. That is why they are protected. Killing a lobster that is 100 years old or more is considered a threat to the species. In 2013, a man in Sweden escaped from prison one day before his sentence ended because he had a toothache. He went to the dentist, and once the pain was gone, he returned to prison to finish his final day. These cute animals, which could not be named centipedes because they have more than 100 legs, have caused many problems for trains in Australia in recent years, since they like to invade the tracks to eat them, and when trains pass, they leave everything slippery. They even caused a derailment in 2013. People could not understand how a couple was able to keep a restaurant in China running 21 hours a day without rest. They began calling the place the Robot Couple Restaurant. Later it was discovered that, in reality, the place was managed by two pairs of identical twins. There is a pagoda in Henan province in China that was built in the year 1049 by the Song dynasty and has survived 6 floods, 38 earthquakes, and many other disasters, yet it remains intact after nearly a millennium. Mike Jeffries, owner of the clothing brand Abercrombie & Fitch, once said that he does not want overweight or unattractive people to wear his clothes or be employed by his company. 9-time Olympic gold medalist Mark Spitz once told the Russian swimming coach that his mustache helped him increase speed in the water. 4 years later, at the next Olympic Games, the entire Russian swimming team wore mustaches. Spitz had said it as a joke. Elvis never performed an encore at a concert, meaning he never did the classic act of pretending to leave and then returning to perform 2 or 3 more songs. That is why it became a tradition to always announce at the end that Elvis had already left the building. The episode of The Simpsons titled Homer at the Bat is credited with having saved the lives of at least 2 people, because in one scene, Homer chokes on a donut, and a poster is shown on screen demonstrating the Heimlich maneuver used in those situations. During the Great Stink of 1858, the River Thames, which runs through the middle of the city of London, England, reached such a high level of filth that people could cross it on foot. Metallica was the first band to perform on all 7 continents: Asia, Africa, North America, South America, Antarctica, Europe, and Australia. Yes, apparently that is what the continents are called now. Actor Antonio Banderas watched the premiere of the movie Puss in Boots, in which he voiced the main character, in an empty movie theater accompanied by 25 cats wearing 3-dimensional glasses. There are 2 automated teller machines next to each other in Antarctica. They are located at McMurdo Station, and a person goes to service them every 2 years. They are the loneliest automated teller machines in the world. When you turn 19 years and 4 days old, you have already lived 10 million minutes. North Korea and China are the only countries where Netflix is not officially available, while in Crimea, its availability is limited due to international sanctions. The Lamborghini Aventador has special explosive charges to detach the doors in case the car flips over. This is because the doors on this model only open upward, making it impossible for someone to open them while upside down. In Australia, there is a plant called Gimpy Gimpy that has microscopic hairs so small that they become embedded in the skin and inject a substance that causes unbearable pain that can last for months. People who play video games regularly are more likely to have lucid dreams, which is the ability to realize when you are dreaming and control what happens. With the endowment fund of Harvard University, which has more than $37 billion, it would be able to pay the tuition of all students using only the interest it generates. The longest-lasting musical piece of all began in 2001 and is still being played today. It is called As Slow as Possible, and is being performed on an organ in a church in Germany. It is scheduled to end in the year 2640, and every time the note changes every few years, large crowds gather at the location. 48 hours after quitting smoking, nerve endings begin to grow back, and the senses of smell and taste start to return to normal. In an experiment where they were observing the feeding habits of termites, researchers discovered that if loud rock music was played, the termites ate wood twice as fast. According to a study, 60% of retired NBA players are in financial bankruptcy just 5 years after leaving the league. Despite what is often said, there are no studies that conclude that cracking your knuckles is a factor that causes arthritis to develop over time. A species of hermaphroditic worm has an unusual way of dealing with its loneliness. It injects sperm into its head in order to reproduce. We have always known that the ancient monument Stonehenge was built hundreds of years ago by an unknown civilization and has remained the same until today. But in reality, almost all the rocks that form part of this place were moved and adjusted for positioning or maintenance between 1901 and 1965. Some years ago, actor Johnny Depp sued the managers of his finances because they were not legally obligated to act in his best interest and were making poor financial decisions. The Wachowski brothers requested $80 million in budget to produce The Matrix. They were only given $10 million, so they took a risk and spent all $10 million on the first scene. When they showed it to the studio, they did not hesitate to give them the remaining $70 million. In 1945, a B-25 plane crashed into the Empire State Building, cutting the elevator cable. By the time the elevator reached the floor, so much cable had piled up underneath that it acted as a cushion. The person who was inside at that moment was injured, but did not die. Tutankhamun's sarcophagus was not made specifically for him. They had to hurry to obtain one because the king died at 18 or 19 years of age. An episode of the series Scrubs that mocked that type of show that used multi-camera setups won an Emmy for Best Multi-Camera Editing. Michael J. Fox was accidentally hanged for real and lost consciousness while filming a scene in Back to the Future Part 3. Trains have a special sand storage system that can be spread in front of the wheels as they move forward. This is used to reduce the risk of derailment when traveling on slippery or difficult tracks. When you blush, the lining of your stomach also turns red. This happens because the nervous system dilates blood vessels in multiple parts of the body at the same time. The unemployment rate in the African country of Zimbabwe is 95%, the highest in the world. This means that almost no one has formal employment to be counted in this statistic. By 60 years of age, people have already lost half of their taste buds. This reduces sensitivity to flavors, especially sweet and salty. When basketball player Yao Ming played for the first time in Miami, the game was promoted by giving away 8,000 fortune cookies. Yao was not offended because he had never seen one and assumed it was an American tradition. The giant pandas found around the world still belong to China. Generally, to rent a pair and display them in a zoo, a fee of $1 million per year must be paid under 10-year contracts. This money goes to foundations for the conservation of the species. Platypuses do not have stomachs. Their esophagus connects directly to their intestines without an intermediate acidic digestive chamber like in other mammals. Newborn turtles can confuse any light around them with moonlight. This completely disorients them, since they use moonlight to reach the ocean and survive the dangers of the beach. Liu Siju, a Chinese math genius who won a gold medal in the Mathematics Olympiad, declined a full scholarship to study at MIT. He preferred to become a Buddhist monk in a monastery. In 2014, in Germany, the police found a man who had an arrest warrant for failure to pay debts. They found him in a casino. At the moment they went to get him, the machine hit a jackpot that he used to pay his debts right then and avoid jail. Otters have a favorite rock, and they keep it under their arm when they are not using it, so they always have it with them. To be able to give someone a tattoo in South Korea, you must first obtain a medical license. Physicist Albert Einstein was also skilled in music. He could play the violin and the piano with great ability. He once mentioned that the greatest scientists are also great artists. Most body fat leaves the body when we exhale. It is believed that 1/3 of the entire world population is infected with the tuberculosis bacteria, but the vast majority never show symptoms. The 2 tallest mountains in the state of Colorado in the United States have almost the same height. This has caused admirers of each mountain to pile rocks on the summit to make their favorite mountain taller. The frog, Nasica batrachus sahyadrensis, was discovered a few years ago in India. It normally lives underground and uses its long tongue to eat termites and ants. And I know it does not look like a frog at all, but it is. A study showed that when a Monopoly player is given twice as much money, he generally begins to act disrespectfully toward his opponents and becomes more competitive. If you have gone many hours without brushing your teeth, it is very likely that there are more bacteria living in your mouth right now than there are humans on planet Earth. NASA astronauts earn around $64,000 a year. Common flies can live from 20 to 30 days, not just 24 hours as the myth says. During that time, they can lay hundreds of eggs and reproduce quickly. In 1995, the company Namco patented auxiliary games, smaller games to play while the main one loaded, preventing other companies' games from using them. The patent just expired recently. The first time the Japanese heard the voice of their emperor was when he announced on the radio that Japan would surrender in the Second World War. During World War II, the small city of Oak Ridge in Tennessee, United States, which had a population of 75,000 people at the time, used 14% of the country's total electricity consumption. This was because uranium was being processed there to build the atomic bomb. Bees can sense the electric field of flowers and use it to find pollen. They detect small electric charges that change when another bee has recently visited the flower. In 1989, the Mitsubishi Corporation bought a majority stake in Rockefeller Center in New York. That era marked the highest point of Japan's economy. But when the real estate bubble burst in the following decade, there was a recession. Mitsubishi had to sell its share. All satellites orbiting the Earth must complete one full orbit in less than 7 months. If they do not, they drift off course and change direction toward the sun's orbit, making them unusable. After being evicted from his home, Eminem went to Los Angeles to participate in the 1997 Rap Olympics. He placed second, but rapper and producer Dr. Dre heard the recording and immediately sought him out. Now he is one of the most recognized artists worldwide. In Brazil, a Mega Man comic licensed by Capcom called The New Adventures of Mega Man was published. It only lasted 16 issues between 1996 and 1998, but it is remembered by fans because it included strange and unusual elements in the franchise. Later, the creators of the comic admitted that they had never played a Mega Man title. In 1991, the Space Shuttle Columbia, which was orbiting the Earth, carried 60,000 jellyfish to observe how they reacted in a zero-gravity environment. Among the requirements to work on expeditions in Antarctica are not having wisdom teeth and not having an appendix, since if an emergency occurs, it is impossible to return in time for treatment. If you have more than 100 tabs open in the Chrome application, instead of showing the number, it displays a happy face. Leave a like if this always happens to you. Or is it just me? Dogs really like toys that they can chew and that make funny sounds, because it is the same thing they would do for fun to a small animal, and it is exactly how it would sound. It is something less innocent than we think. Vikings used to sell narwhal tusks to Europeans, who believed they were unicorn horns with magical healing properties. Since they could not achieve the desired Hulk growl sound during the production of The Avengers, the filmmakers decided to support it with recordings of growls from the original Hulk, Lou Ferrigno. A motorcycle that appeared on the coast of Canada was returned to its owner on the other side of the world in Japan. The motorcycle had crossed the entire ocean, dragged by the force of the tsunami in 2011. Both flammable and inflammable mean that a substance burns easily. In the 1920s, the word flammable began to be used out of fear that people might think inflammable meant not flammable because of the "in" prefix. The correct way to say that something is not flammable would be non-flammable, but almost nobody uses that. Research showed that people who play Tetris in the days following a traumatic event were helped in preventing the formation of associated negative memories. This was only tested with Tetris, but it is believed that other video games might also help. There is a parasite called Cymathoa exigua that likes to enter the mouths of fish and replace their tongue. It actually does not do a bad job as a tongue, since it does not harm the fish, but it stays living there. In many parts of the world, eggs are commonly washed before being displayed in stores to make them look better before being sold. However, it has been shown that this removes a protective layer and allows bacteria to enter. According to a North Korean school textbook, Kim Jong-un, the leader of that country, learned to drive at 3 years old. In 2015, The city of Beijing in China banned 2.5 million cars from circulation in order to reduce pollution and make the sky appear blue during a parade. There are species of crabs that live inside oysters, clams, and mussels. One of these is the pea crab, which is considered a parasite because by eating the food of the oyster or host animal, it affects its nutrition. The Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland is crazy because, at that time, hat makers used mercury, which caused them to develop symptoms of mercury poisoning, making them appear insane. Mad as a hatter was a common saying. The period in which food and agricultural products began to be transported from one side of the world to the other, starting in the 15th century, was called the Columbian Exchange. Before this, for example, there was no coffee in Colombia, potatoes in Ireland, tomatoes in Italy, pineapples in Hawaii, or oranges in Florida, foods that became some of the most popular in those countries. The tennis balls used in the Wimbledon Championship are recycled and used as homes for mice. These small shelters help protect them from predators. The diet of the bearded vulture consists of 90% bones. This allows it to feed on leftovers left by other animals. To eat bones that are too large, it picks them up, flies very high, and drops them so they break into smaller pieces when they hit the ground. 800 different languages are spoken in New York, making it the most linguistically diverse city in the world. The voices of almost all the zombies in the video game Left 4 Dead were recorded by the lead singer of the band Faith No More, Mike Patton, who has also recorded his voice for movies and other video games, including Portal 2. He is considered one of the rock vocalists with the widest vocal range. Whales can get sunburned, just like humans, and their skin also darkens as a way to protect itself from ultraviolet rays. Crows are so intelligent that they can pass the marshmallow test, which involves resisting the temptation to eat what they have if they know they will receive more food by waiting. This test has been done with young children to study how intelligence develops. According to Matt Groening, the Fox television network never supported the series Futurama, and even changed its time slot several times to deliberately confuse viewers, which resulted in its cancellation in 2003. Despite this, it returned with more seasons and movies in later years, and in 2023, 20 new episodes are set to be released. There is a dog breed called the Swedish Valhund that looks like a wolf corgi, although they are not genetically related at all. Many primates have the anatomical structure necessary to speak like humans, but they lack the neural connections necessary to control their larynx precisely. This brain limitation prevents them from articulating words and developing complex spoken language. If you are holding a map in Minecraft with one hand and a torch in the other, the map will light up, and you will be able to see it clearly even at night. While the movie Leon the Professional was being filmed, a thief who had just run out of a store turned himself into police officers who were actually extras filming a scene. This attracted the attention of real police officers, who then captured him. At what age did you find out that barcode scanners actually read the white part, not the black part of the code? Genghis Khan, along with his army, killed so many people that the lands where these violent acts took place became fertile again, and during that time, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was significantly reduced. There is a gas cloud in the constellation Aquila that contains enough alcohol to make 400 trillion mugs full of beer. To this day, scientists still have not agreed and have not established an official reason why anesthesia works. We simply know that it does its job. Orcas are not whales. They are like the dark, evil version of dolphins. They actually belong to the dolphin family and are the largest of them all. The highest mountain in the Netherlands is Mount Scenery. It has a height of approximately 2,910 feet and is located on an island in the Caribbean. This place is counted as Dutch territory since 2010, after the dissolution of the Netherlands Antilles. To this day, scientists still have not agreed and have not established an official reason why sleep is necessary for humans and most animal species. We simply know that it has to be done. The series Squid Game was planned to be a single-season story, but after its success, Netflix decided to order 2 more seasons. The creator of the series, Hwang Dong-hyuk, only had 6 months to write seasons 2 and 3, which were filmed at the same time. Before all of this, he had been trying for almost 10 years to get a studio to produce the series. There are currently 31 GPS satellites in orbit around the planet, and all of them are equipped with an atomic clock capable of measuring time with an accuracy of 1 second divided by 1 billion. Mangoes also get sunburned, or rather, they are damaged by the sun. In Australia, a grower stated that he lost $40,000 in 1 year because of this. The damaged mangoes are turned into pig feed. Garbage collectors in Ankara, Turkey, opened a library with all the books they have found while collecting trash that people had thrown away. Their collection contains more than 6,000 copies. The reason the Dubai police include luxury patrol cars such as a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, and a Bentley is because there are many fast cars in the area, and regular patrol vehicles would not be able to chase them if they exceed the speed limit. Monkeys and chimpanzees use bird feathers and pieces of grass as dental floss when they have food stuck between their teeth. A player of EVE Online founded a bank within the game that operated for months managing the money of other players. He did this until one day he decided to take all the money and leave, which was equivalent to 170,000 real dollars. And there was no way to punish him because everything he did was legal within the game. The United States version and the European version of Dennis the Menace were created independently, but by coincidence, they were published on the same day in their respective countries, March 12, 1951. Before 1916, people could enter the torch of the Statue of Liberty with capacity for 12 visitors at a time. The area was closed due to sabotage carried out by German agents in the incident known as the Black Tom explosion, which partially damaged the structure. Now, only maintenance personnel are allowed inside. On August 6, 2025, the Curiosity rover turned 13 years old on Mars, and, as is tradition, it sang happy birthday to itself. Singer Kate Bush broke the record for the song that took the longest time to reach #1 on the charts, with the single Running Up That Hill, which reached that position after 37 years. This was thanks to the resurgence the song experienced after appearing in the popular series Stranger Things. Your belly button was once your mouth. I will leave that there for you to think about. During embryonic development, the belly button was connected to the umbilical cord that supplied all your nutrients. Veins can appear blue because subcutaneous fat only allows blue light to pass through to where the veins are. So that is the only color that is reflected, causing this peculiar effect. Eastern skunk cabbage is one of the few plants that generate their own heat. It is normally at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. This helps it bloom even when it is in a snowy place. All octopuses are venomous in some way. They use their beak and their tongue to inject venom through the exoskeleton of their prey, although this does not pose a risk to humans. People who stay awake until very late at night are more likely to be single than in a relationship, according to a study that was conducted. In 1956, the United States government placed many containers of beer near 2 atomic bombs that were detonated in tests to see if the beer was still drinkable. And it was, just in case you were wondering.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.